What's up, fam? Just found out recently that Michael Madsen passed away. We're going to talk about a little bit of not a little bit. We're going to talk about our favorite movies with Madsen. And
Where were you when True Lies and Forrest Gump were in theaters? Did you see those in theaters?
that's all coming up on this episode. Stay tuned. I'm Drew.
I'm Tony.
And this is Back for Our Future, the show that goes back to look at our history and past and maybe yours and possibly even into the future. The great thing about this show, as we always say, is that we get to learn about our culture, our history, our fun through movies, through stories and anecdotes. With me is the man with the steel trap memory, the guy who I once described as a Nike Jedi. Tony, what's up, brother?
Here, buddy. How's it going?
It's good. It's good. For viewers that pay attention that actually watch this show, so I actually had to change my office around. So you guys, some of you might be able to see part of my desk here and some other, I had to move around. So I'm on the opposite wall. My whole wall is wood panel, but I'm on the opposite wall because I have a new employee in the office and he shares the other half of the room now. So I have a guy across from me now.
I saw that. Congratulations.
Yeah, great. He's a good dude. You'll enjoy working with Maddie one day. He's a fun guy. All right. So just before we started the show, I sent Tony a text. He probably already knew about it, but someone sent it to me that Michael Madsen recently passed away. And for us, it was today. When you guys are hearing this, it's probably been a week or so. And that's an interesting one because when we were talking about it pre-show, Tony brought up the fact that Madsen was the first named actor I'd ever worked with on the very first movie I ever made. It's a film called Sacrifice that had Michael Madsen, Bokeem Woodbine, and Jamie Luner. And it is kind of interesting because when you meet an actor for the first time, I didn't know much of who Madsen was. I mean, I think Reservoir Dogs had come out. I knew him in that way, but I didn't really know him in the sense of like, I didn't know what it was going to be like. And so part of the show we decided to talk about this morning is I'm going to tell a little story about my first encounters with Michael Madsen because they're kind of wild. And then we were going to go over, Tony had a good idea for us to go over and talk about some of our favorite Madsen movies. And we'll talk about some of, like a greatest hits. So it'll be a little micro tribute to Madsen because he was in some stuff we both really enjoyed. One of them is, I think, a movie, I can't wait till we get there because it was one that I don't know if it did well in the box office, but Tony and I really liked it. I remember talking about it. And we'll go over that stuff. Is there anything you got to say before we jump into the Madsen stuff? I mean, what's your take on old Michael Madsen?
I always thought he was a tremendously great actor. He had that really gravelly voice, and he played some really downright rotten characters sometimes, but also played a lot of like face characters and hero types too in certain movies, and I really enjoyed him because he was a different kind of actor. He's like that manly man actor. It's like he's a man's man type guy. It's like he's that kind of guy, right? So I mean, you'd see him in movies like Species, and he's more of a good guy there. Then all of a sudden you see him in something like The Getaway, which I'm sure we're going to talk about because we saw it together, and he's just a downright scoundrel. So
yeah,
I really enjoyed him, and he's got that really signature voice that you can definitely tell it's Michael Madsen, even if you're not actually looking at him.
Yeah, for sure. It's very interesting because when the very first movie I worked on that launched my career into the film industry was the film I mentioned called Sacrifice, and I was just a PA. I was bottom of the food chain, and here is the film crew comes to Alabama, and I mean, it is chaos. Scott Lumpkin was the location manager on that, and now he's executive producer of Life of Chuck. But Scott gets me on board. I get my job there thanks to Eva Golson at the film office. I get my little gig there, and I'm learning about lockups, and which is where you protect an area so that we call them bogeys, but people don't walk through a scene, and my back is always to set and I'm always facing out and I learn all the rules. And I've told the story on the show before where the camera guy on this show, like a week from this story, he jumps into the water and a stingray hits him in the shin. And suddenly I go from being a PA to a camera person. And they're shooting film, by the way. So I had no idea what I was doing. Cupcakes over there, just stuffing film into the camera. And so anyway, it was a lot. It was a big learning lesson. It was a huge, huge, crazy scenario. But the story I have with Madsen is we're shooting in somewhere in Baldwin County because Lumpkin lives over that way, and he would always, when we did movies, he would always put the locations close to his house because I live on the opposite side of town. It's a pretty long drive. We're shooting in Baldwin County, and we're shooting at this jail or this, I forget what the building was. We're shooting at this building, but like a few doors down, across the street and a few doors down, is a bar. And Tony's talked about it before on the show, but there is nothing worse when you're a PA, especially when you hear, okay, let's bring first team to set. First team, as we've said on the show, is your primary talent. Let's bring first team to set. And then you hear this little squeaky voice come across the walkie, and that squeaky voice is mine. It's like, I knocked on Mr. Madsen's door. He didn't answer. And they said, knock again. I said, yes, sir. So I knock again. He still didn't answer. They're like, open the door. And I'm scared shitless at this point. I don't know what I'm getting into. So I go and open this door. He's not there. So then I have to go on the walkie. And luckily I'd learned something. I had an AD on that, Tommy Burke. Shout out to Tommy. Tommy goes, if it's something really serious, you say go to 2. Well, now the whole crew knows that they can't find first team because I didn't go to 2 in the beginning. So then I say, Mr. Burke, go to 2, please. He goes to 2, and I'm sure you could have probably heard a symphony of clicks as all these a-holes are flipping to 2 to hear what's about to happen. And everybody. So I go to 2, and I say, he's not in his trailer. And Tommy was very calm, but he was like, you need to find him, son. And you need to find him right now. And I'm like, well, where do I look? He was like, go to the bar. And I said, there's a bar? I didn't know. I was 18. I go, there he is, sitting there. He's friends with everybody in this bar. And Michael Madsen is sitting there. He is like there's a couple of shot glass. He's had a few drinks. He's having a great time at the bar. It's a night out for him. And I walk in and he sees me and his face sinks. And I'm like, oh no. I was like, Mr. Madsen, we're ready for you on set or something like that. And he wasn't rude, but he knew I was a scared shitless PA. And he said, I'll be there when I want to. And I said, I understand, sir, but it would be very helpful if you could get there now or something. I'm trying anything I can to get him. So Michael's gone for a while. I can't get him. So then they send over the second AD. He can't get him either. So then Tommy comes along. Now, Tommy was a big guy. Like Tommy, for an AD, he had he was a big dude, big stature. He's still around. He just retired from the business. Tommy comes over and he gets him. And he walks him back to set, and he just does it with never raising his voice, but he did it like a dad carefully scooping his child up, and they get him back to set or whatever. And that's the end of my portion of it. But it was one of the scariest things ever. Mr. Madsen, we're ready for you on set. And he's like hammering down drinks. But yeah, that's my Madsen story on that. And he was fine the rest of the time, but no, he wasn't. But I'm not going to trash on him. He did his own thing the rest of the show, but it was fun to have him in there just for that moment. So there you go.
The worst thing in the world is being a person that has no clout on set whatsoever. None. Zero clout on set. And you scoop up like number 1 or number 2 on the call sheet. It's just the worst thing in the world. I mean, everyone's done it that's been in the industry, but it's, some people are better than others. Some people they'll just come straight to set. And others, don't. I mean, everyone's got a story like that, though. I mean, it's kind of funny, but yeah, he was always known for hanging out in the bars. Alec Baldwin tells a great story about him doing The Getaway, which is probably one of my favorite Michael Madsen movies, to be honest with you.
It's solid, yeah.
And his character is just such a downright scoundrel in it. You feel like that part could only really be played by him, even though it's a remake, but still pretty impressive. And he tells the story of those two guys. They're both hanging out at a pool, and they don't know if they have to go into work or not on that movie. And so Madsen's over sitting in the corner of this pool, and there's like a bunch of empty beers and stuff like that around him. And the phone rings at the pool, and they tell Alec to come answer the phone. He goes over to the phone and pretends he uses like a Mexican accent
Oh my
and
God.
pretending like he works there. And the person on the other line, I'm assuming the person on the other line is the second AD because it usually is. And and so second AD is calling him and trying to get these guys back to work. And Alec Baldwin's pretending he can't find any of these guys. And
Oh my God.
had to go back to work. He kind of protected Madsen from having to go back, because he's probably been drinking a lot. And so, kind of a funny story that he tells that you can scoop up off of Stephen Baldwin's podcast because he does all those types of stories and stuff like that. And he did a great interview with Michael Madsen, so check that out. We don't like to always give out shout outs to other podcasts, but we're gonna do it here. And yeah, I mean, I was always a big fan of Michael Madsen, and he's gotten more into the indie world, but he's always pops up in something, right? Because like he'd pop up, in Hateful Eight and Once Upon a Time in America, and all these movies. So Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, sorry, and and so that's kind of who he was. Like he'd do a lot of indies, but he'd also pop up and still working with Quentin Tarantino after all these years and everything else. So really good actor. Just people passing away is just always tough.
Yeah, it is. And it's one of those things of like, I love pretty much anytime he's in a Tarantino movie. Obviously Reservoir Dogs is a big jam, and he's fantastic in that movie. Also a great a-hole. Um, and I love him in the Tarantino stuff. I've said it before. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is one of my personal favorite movies. I don't know what to tell you. People ask me that all the time, and they're shocked by it. But I just really adore that film, and he's really great in that movie. He's a lot of fun in that. He's great in Hateful Eight. Hateful Eight's a hard movie for me to watch because it's kind of slow and it drags on a little bit too much for me, but still great. But I got to tell you, I do enjoy The Getaway because, as Tony mentioned, we saw that one together. But I got to be honest. I When I saw the movie Species, I
Okay.
absolutely loved that movie. I loved it, and I thought it was great. And I think part of it was because I liked Michael Madsen in that movie. He was a cool character. I also, of course, Natasha Henstridge was smoking hot, and so she was just eye candy across the board. But was he also in Mimic, or is that Tom Sizemore that's in Mimic?
It's not Madsen. He's not in that.
Anyway, it is a shame that he's gone. He does leave behind a really good category of movies, or a catalog of movies. Do you have, aside from Getaway, is there anything else that stands out to you, Tony, as something worth watching that's maybe a forgotten Madsen moment?
I mean, he's got some really good ones. Like he's good in Donnie Brasco. You I also, we've talked about Wyatt Earp, and he plays Virgil Earp, and he's great in that too. I mean, and also he had some really big stuff in the early '90s too. Like he was in The Doors. He's played Tom Baker in The Doors. He's in Thelma and Louise, which is a classic. I mean, he's in a lot of big films, and especially in the '90s. So that's why we like to talk about him because he was pretty huge in this era, and we love to get to watch him. So that's yeah. I mean, I'd recommend any of those movies. He's also in Kill Me Again, which I still think is an underrated film. We've talked about this as well, but
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. So, as we think about that, maybe if you're looking for something to watch, find you a good Michael Madsen movie. It gives you something different to watch, something fun. As we do on this show, we like to launch some movies into it. But we're going to jump back into our ongoing list here. Now we have done, and by we I mean Tony has done a fantastic job of putting together this program in general, but specifically I've really enjoyed this stretch of summer because this particular stretch of summer has been so many great movies. We've had so many things to talk about across it. And ironically, we're almost in sync now with the timeline, which is odd. It won't last, obviously, but the first movie that we're going to talk about came out on July 6th. And it, 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 I mean, it's one of the biggest films of all time. I think it's made a major impact. Interestingly enough, it's related to, although not shot in Alabama, the author lives in Alabama, is from here. He lived in Fairhope, Alabama. His name is Winston Groom. And the movie we're, of course, talking about is The Great Forrest Gump, starring Tom Hanks.
He's passed away too, Winston Grimm, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah.
But Forrest Gump, I mean, come on, that's like one of the all-time classics. You know, six-time Oscar winner. I mean, it's like it was a huge movie in 1994. I remember specifically because this is still coinciding with my St. Louis trip, and Richard Rollins still on this trip,
Oh, got
and
it.
we had seen The Shadow, which we talked about on our last episode, previous to our tribute, and um, we saw The Shadow. We wanted to see Forrest Gump while we were on that trip, and we just ran out of time. And so we didn't get to see that film together, which would have been fun because we're both big history guys, and that would have been a film for us to see together. We didn't get to, but we did get to see it and talk about it and stuff like that over the years. But Forrest Gump is without question one of the all-time great movies. It's
100%.
has everything going for it. It has this amazing cast, and of course, Tom Hanks wins an Oscar for it because Tom Hanks is amazing. And Tom Hanks is just rolling at this point, right? Because he's got all the big movies going in the 90s at this point. And he's just churning them out one after another. And this is, of course, I mean, iconic, right? Everybody does the Forrest Gump voice. I quote this movie all the time. I still quote this movie constantly to this day. I mean, I'll probably do it today at some point. Anytime my dad gets ice cream, I'll go up to him and say, Lieutenant Dad, ice cream, Lieutenant Dad, something like that, right? Ice cream, Lieutenant Dad. I'll just do that. I do it all the time. And so, I always joke around and do the voice and stuff like that as well. So, um, I love Forrest Gump, and I love the music because the soundtrack is absolutely amazing. And I mean, this soundtrack for this movie sold over 12 million copies. That's a soundtrack, and it was like,
And
yeah, it's a
and it's
double.
and it's not it's a compilation. It's not even original music. That's the thing that's so wild about it, right? Is it's a basically a best of album. It just happens to be done so well because of the era in which we get to talk about music, like the way it processes and the way music is used in the film. And to Tony's point, I think that Forrest Gump is one of those movies. Most people that listen to the show of our age bracket have definitely seen it, but it's one of those ones that I hope that younger generations will go watch, despite the fact that it may not be new and modern. I hope they would go watch it because it's brilliant storytelling. It's character development like no other movie ever made, in my opinion. I mean, you just fall in love with this guy and you follow him with all these great characters and all these great moments and all these bits that are quotable and livable, and it's funny and it's charming and it's heartbreaking. You cry in it. It's one of those things. It's one of those movies that shared with an audience, you get all that energy from coming from the audience that you don't get as much, in my opinion, out of the modern cinema. This is one of those ones that truly is. I was talking about this to somebody the other day, and it's a stupid statement, but it's true. Or at least to me, I was having a conversation. I was like, look, I love movies, but every once in a while I see a film, and they were asking, what does that mean? I was like, well, the distinction to me is film is a movie that I hold in a little bit higher regard. It's something that gets to the very core of my being. And I just use the word film as a shorthand to being like, this is a film worth watching. It's a movie, but essentially I'm just giving it a little extra label, if you will. And this is one of those to me. Like Forrest Gump is a film that my kids have seen it. I let them watch it. We have to fast forward one little scene, but I've let my kids watch it. They cried at it. You can't not cry at it. It's just so good. It's just brilliant. And the soundtrack, to Tony's point, ties in so well. So how does that soundtrack sell 12 million? Because Tell people who may not be familiar, because the it's a double, right? Wasn't it a double CD set?
That yeah, and you're talking about music that came out 20 to anywhere from 20 to 40 years before this film was released. 20 to 35 years before it was released. It's not like you said, it's not new music. It's basically like buying a best of CD with all your favorite artists. I mean, it's got everybody on it though, right? So it's Elvis Presley and Dwayne Eddy and Clarence Frogman Henry and the Rooftop Singers and Wilson Pickett and Joan Baez and Creedence Clearwater Revival, the Four Tops, Aretha Franklin, Bob Dylan, the Beach Boys, the Mamas and the Papas, Buffalo Springfield, Jackie DeShannon, The Doors, Simon Garfunkel. I mean, that's just CD one.
Right, right.
Then you got Jefferson Airplane and the Youngbloods and Scott McKenzie and the Byrds and the Fifth Dimension and Harry Nilsson and Three Dog Night, the Supremes, B.J. Thomas, Randy Newman, Leonard Skinner, Jackson Brown, the Doobie Brothers, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Fleetwood Mac, Willie Nelson, Bob Seger, Alvin Silvestri. It's just loaded from top
Yeah,
to bottom. I I remember so many people loving the soundtrack. I mean, it's pretty impressive. I mean, I'm a huge fan of music from that era, and they use it so well. Like Robert Zemeckis does such a great job peppering this movie with classic tracks, and I that's one of the things about soundtracks, though, right? So when you're watching a movie and you have familiar songs, that brings you closer to the film. I don't
right.
think people understand that. When you use music that nobody knows sometimes, or you cheap it, you cheap out on the soundtrack and use music that's really doesn't have a lot of a very endearing quality to it. People kind of detach themselves from the movie a little bit when you use stuff that, oh, man, that's such a great song. I love that song. It brings you into the scene even more. And I think that gets lost sometimes because I do know some directors that are really good about. I've been on sets before where the directors have talked to producers about, no, we got to get that exact song for the scene. We got to get that exact, and they get it. I mean, when you're demanding that kind of stuff, you get it. You understand how to bring a scene together using song. A lot of people just go, well, we got to put some music into this thing, you know. And those movies tend to not do as well. This is a classic. This is a hit for a reason. I mean, this movie, the way they put it together, made it a hit. Because when everybody watches every scene and they hear a song that they know in almost every scene of this movie, everybody wants to watch this film.
Right. It ties to quote the Lebowski, the rug really ties the room together. It really fits very, very well to make it work. It's and what's funny is, like, it as you said, though, the soundtrack is also the eras in which Forrest is living. So, like, not only does the soundtrack complement it in terms of that element, it's part of the storytelling, and it's in helping. It helps. There's that film theory concept of what is it when you, anyway, it doesn't matter, but there's a film theory side of things that helps you uh, defeat suspension of disbelief, and this actually forces you to believe it more because it becomes more relatable and real, and it's such an unbelievable story that you need that music to almost work as a grounding element to help make sure you realize this isn't reality, and it's a good thing. It's kind of like right now there's a single. F1's blown up in the theaters and it's doing really well, but there's a single from it that, I hear it because my kids listen to popular radio, but it just doesn't seem to me, it doesn't make sense to the soundtrack. I haven't seen the film, so maybe it does, but it feels like it's just popular artist wrote a song and they just plopped it on there, versus what we're talking about with Forrest Gump or any movie that has a purposeful soundtrack where it makes sense for the film side of things. And so it's one of those ones that it's just a very interesting scenario. I see a footnote on looking at our notes here, and I did not realize this. So 1994, obviously Forrest Gump has come out, which you could go purchase right now on this company's website.
That's why I put it on.
Now, that's pretty interesting. What do you have for this? I'll let you tee it up. I'll tease it. You deliver.
I mean, I don't think anyone would even realize it, you know. But 1994 is when Jeff Bezos well, found Cadabra, which is going to eventually become Amazon. But
Right.
that's going to be 1994, right in this July area, July 6th, July, that first week of July. So Jeff Bezos gonna found Cadabra, which is gonna eventually become Amazon. Which, I mean, if you're listening to this show, there's no possible way you haven't heard of the company. It's impossible. You'd have to be absolutely stuck under a rock for
Or you could
long
be in the Amazon.
to be in the Amazon. Exactly,
Huh?
exactly. What? But yeah, I mean, and of course, the company starts out as a way to buy books and rent books in spots, but um, it's going to blow up into the company it has now become, taking over the world, and has put countless businesses out of business, sadly. Um, but I wouldn't. It's not quite as evil as Netflix,
There we go. We got to get our Netflix jab. Well done. Well done.
but no, it's not. I don't. I mean, I don't consider it evil. I'm still a guy who likes to when I buy stuff, and it's not old school. I just like to get exercise. I like to go to places and go shopping.
Yeah.
I like to actually walk into places and do it because it's moving around. I'm getting I'm it's like a lot of things. I get done a lot of things at once. I get to move around. It's a little exercise, and it's still I get to go look at other stuff and things like that. A lot of people don't like that. Some people need Amazon too. It's helpful to some people that really can't get out as much, and I understand that. So it's a great service. I mean, I have bought things off Amazon, so I'm not perfect in this scenario. Sometimes you can't find something, and Amazon does have it. So it does something. My brother uses it all the time. He loves it.
All right. So we jump ahead a week and we land now. Now, this particular movie, I believe I confused with another movie earlier in the show. If you've not, if you've not heard this, we went round and round about different movies, and I believe I brought up one of these movies being confused on the other one, and Tony said, "Hey, just wait, it's coming up."
Yeah, right.
So that brings us to a movie called Angels in the Outfield, which I can't remember which one is which anymore. I just know one of them, the kid had like a rubber band arm, and that might have been the rookie of the year, maybe.
Rookie of the year. Well, the one you got. I mean, you get them all confused, but the uh, the one you got confused with this last time was Little Big League.
Hmm.
Owns the Minnesota Twins.
That's
Um,
right.
Different. This is now, where the real Angels come to help the Angels on the field. And of course, Rookie of the Year is where the kid's actually playing baseball, and is the is the great pitcher.
That's it.
Uh, there you go. That we've kind of separated these three movies now that kind of congeal into Drew's brain as one film. We saw this one together
Yeah.
in theater at Movies 10. I'm sure. I mean, not Movies 10. Sorry, we saw it at Carmine 10.
Now this
So
one has Daniel Stern.
this one does not have Daniel Stern.
Oh man.
Daniel Stern was in Rookie of the Year, and he directed it too. He directed
Okay.
Rookie.
Okay.
This one's got kind of a mini taxi reunion of sorts because it's got Tony Danza and it's got Christopher Lloyd, and of course both those guys are from my one of my all time favorite shows, Taxi, which I just absolutely love to watch to this day. And of course it's got Danny Glover, Brenda Fricker from So I Married an Axe Murderer, Ben Johnson, J.O. Saunders. Of course, it's got Joseph Gordon-Levitt as a younger actor, and it's even got Matthew McConaughey. He's even playing one of the angels, and one of the angels on the field because
Right.
they're totally different. I really enjoyed this film. I mean, I'm a baseball guy, so of course I love it, but I like all these actors a lot. Anytime can get Tony Danza and Christopher Lloyd as stars of a film, I'll always watch that.
I remember. Again, I don't remember the movie because they're all mixed together in my brain, as Tony said, congealed into one pudding. but the cast alone, the fragments that I do have in my brain, I just remember it being one of those films that's really endearing and fun in terms of it just has a fun concept that the angels come in to help the angels. Like it's kind of a fun identity. How did it end up doing box office wise? Because this is another baseball movie in a year of baseball movies. So how does it end up performing?
I mean, it was it was like a $30 million movie. It did 52 million, and of course that's way more than enough in that era because secondary markets are just pretty rampant at this point. So you can easily make money after it gets out of theaters. So yeah, it was a hit. It was considered a hit, and it's one of the movies they when the anniversary time comes around, they like to do little things for it. And yeah, I mean of course it's a remake from a 1951 movie, and in that movie they used the Pittsburgh Pirates as the team that is really bad. Of course, the Angels were not around in 1951. Baseball team was. So this nice little concept of making the Angels help the Angels, I thought was kind of a fun little twist in changing around the teams.
And that is put up against one of my all-time favorite movies. It's certainly in my top 3 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, and that's going to be the movie True Lies. And there's a multitude of reasons. First off, True Lies is one of the funniest action movies ever made to me. It has got moments in it that are and the late Bill Paxton is so phenomenally good in this movie. I love him so much in this movie that it's one of my favorite roles he was ever in. Truly, it is one of my favorite. Jamie Lee Curtis is just there's a scene where he says dance for me and she's doing the whole striptease and she's so bad at it. And you know, she's a great actor, but she's absolutely hilarious and really makes the movie. She really brings another level to it because Arnold, you're going to get action, but with her, you suddenly have a different level of stakes because she's just such a great every woman in the movie. It's truly one of the most fun, and they have that epic sequence in this movie that I'll never forget. And I don't remember if we saw this together. I'll let you jump in and tell that part, but there's a sequence with the Harrier jet that's incredible, but there's also a sequence where they blow up that bridge, the Key West bridge, that is just stupid bad. Like that is just so good. It's one of those scenes that just I absolutely, truly, truly, truly love it.
Well, we were chomping at the bit to see this one together, and we did
Yeah.
because we knew that jet scene was coming where they shoot into the building. That is an all time classic action sequence. I mean, for me, and of course, you got Arnold, you got Jamie, Tom Arnold is really amazing in this film. He's hilarious, and this is kind of his peak performance, I think, in his career. And of course, you talked about Bill Paxton; he's wonderful always. And Tia Carrera's in this as well, who would work with years later in like 2004, so like 10 years after this. But she's wonderful and amazing, of course. And yeah, it's got the great cast. It's got a director. Maybe you heard of James Cameron. He's done a couple of decent movies over the course of his career and has made like $800 billion at the box
Right.
office with all his films. The guy is an absolute legend. All his movies are just incredible. I mean, what can you say? I mean, the movie at the time, it's 1994. You've got this great cast. You have this amazing director. I mean, James Cameron and Arnold have already made classic films by this point, and it's just another one to add to the list. I mean, it's you and I loved it. Saw it at Carmike 10 pretty quick in its run.
Oh yeah. It's like I said, it's still in my top 3 of all Arnold films, just because of how much fun it is to watch the movie, how funny it is, how just silly and entertaining and action packed, and there's really great moments in it. It's a classic. It is. It's another definitely an Arnold classic, but it's an action movie classic. It's also one that I would say if you've never seen it, it's worth looking it up to see if you can find it. just because it's a lot of fun. It's just a fun movie. You're not going to go wrong with it.
It's the kind of movie that today, if they made it today, it would probably the budget would probably be like $250 million, but they shot it at the time for about 100 million,
Right.
and of course it made like 380 million, so it was a huge hit. But it was that kind of movie. I mean, if shot today with everything that was going on in it, it'd be well over the film probably. But of course, James Cameron uses huge budgets now. Of course, he's got just who doesn't open up their pocketbook for James Cameron these days? But yeah, I mean, it was huge hit, classic film. I mean, we're pretty loaded today because almost everything we're talking about is classic films.
For sure. That's what I'm saying. That's why I've loved this summer series. Speaking of series, while this is happening, while this is occurring, we're closing out on the World Cup, which at the time we talked about this a little bit. You've been a big fan of, and you're following it, and so we kind of get to the big finish here, and I'll let you talk about that a little bit because again, that sports history way more than I ever would. But what do we land on with that side of things?
So it's funny because like we didn't get into it a couple episodes as much. You had made you had asked a question if the World Cup back in 1994 was as big as it maybe is today, and I would say that it might have been bigger back in the day, because for one thing, the 1984 World Cup is the most attended World Cup of all time. More people walked through the gates of this World Cup, with almost 3.6 million people attended the 52 matches, which is a record for World Cups
Yeah.
since ever. So that's pretty impressive in itself. And of course, it was held here in America, and it's a weird World Cup in the sense that, um, you know, usually when I watch World Cups, I'm up till 8 a.m. watching World Cup soccer in a country that's across the globe. In this case, we were watching these in real time during the day, which is an odd thing to do, and that's one of the things I kind of enjoyed about it, right? Because I'm on this trip. Richard and I are on this trip. We're actually getting to watch the matches together, which I've watched most of the World Cups since then by myself. I mean, this is probably the only World Cup that I've ever watched with another human person. Outside of, I think I watched the final in 2006 with my buddy Jason Kemp, but outside of that, I pretty much watch almost every World Cup game by myself because they're on at like 2 a.m. You know, so these other
In case
people are not with me at the time, so yeah, I mean, this was one of those World Cups where you got to actually watch games at like 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. and stuff like that, and it's being played out in California, and it was just I just remember it being this big thing because it was here in America, and the U.S. did pretty well, but they would if they'd lose a match 1-0 to Brazil, who was going to go on and win the World Cup in penalty kicks against the Italians, who obviously I cheer for the United States and I love the United States team, but my secondary team are the Italians. So Italy loses, America loses, Italy loses, and Brazil ends up winning, and that would be their fourth World Cup win in 1994.
Yeah, it's a dominant party, so to speak. Because for those that don't know, the World Cup is every 4 years. Is that correct? Is every 4 years? Isn't that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. That takes us to July 20th. And there's three movies we're going to talk about here, but one of them, I think, if my assumption is correct, one of these ends up blowing up massive. Now, that's in my memory, so I don't know if that's box office fact or if that's cultural fact. And I mean cultural adjacent to our group. But there's three movies that come out. I'm going to tee them up and then we can talk through them. But we have The Client, It Could Happen to You, and The Mask. So we'll go in the order in which we have them here. Let's start with The Client. I don't remember this movie at all. I don't. Maybe when you say it, it'll trigger something, but I don't remember much about it. It feels like it might be a John Grisham
Yeah,
situation, but it may not be.
this is a John Grisham movie, and of course, John Grisham's big in this era. Of course, all his movies are popping up in theaters, and yeah, he can't sell the rights to these books any faster than possible. But I mean, Joel Schumacher gets to direct this one, and it stars Susan Sarandon, Tommy Lee Jones, Tommy Lee Jones is massive in this time frame. So I mean, he's popping up all over the place as well. And this movie's going to do pretty well. Um, Great cast, of course. Anthony LaPaglia is in it. We love him. He's from Soy Mary Axberger as well, and Mary Louise Parker and Anthony Edwards. And all those guys are pretty big at the time. And you know, another actor who's since passed, Brad Renfro. This is
Yep.
kind of his introduction to film, and all the cast are outstanding, and it did quite well. It was like a $45 million movie, made up almost 120 million, and the John Grisham movies pretty much always were pretty bankable, especially in this era.
Yeah, it's been like I said, it's been a minute. I had a feeling after I said the title and thought about it for a second. I know I've seen it. It's just probably a one time view. Not because I don't like Gresham movies. I enjoy The Firm quite a good bit, and I like Pelican Brief. But this one, I think I felt like the cast was a little bit older, so maybe it didn't directly appeal to me at the time. It was definitely, one of those films where Tony's grand sensibility probably and understanding it probably grabbed him a little bit more than me when it came to theatrical release on this puppy.
Yeah, I was always a big fan of the cast. Of course, I like these veteran cast, um, but this one was really good, and I was always a big Tommy Lee Jones fan in this era too. I always thought he was interesting and kind of fun to watch, and kind of a curmudgeon, but a fun actor nonetheless. And of course, I watch anything with Anthony LaPaglia. I've seen in Sorry Mary Axmer 800,000 times, and is an amazing actor in his own right. Yeah, I love The Client. I did read the book as well, and that does help. And yeah, did quite well. And I saw it at Carmike 10 for this one as well.
There we go. And then that brings in another movie. I remember the title. I feel like it has Renee Zellweger in it. I'm probably wrong, but it was a it was a movie called It Could Happen to You. I don't remember anything past that. I just remember the title apparently. So what do you got on that movie, and just give us the rundown on that film, because this is a trio of films all coming out at the same time mid July. So this is still peak filmmaking or peak audience time. So
So you've gotten Renee Zellweger mixed up with Bridget Fonda in this
there we
case,
go.
and Nicolas Cage is it's Nicolas Cage and Bridget Fonda, and Rosie Perez and Stanley Tucci, and another good cast. And it's about
Very good.
a guy who has a lottery ticket and promises that if he wins the lottery, he'll yeah, it's that movie. You've seen it,
Yep.
and it's a movie that did pretty well. It's like a $20 million movie, made almost 50 million, and it was a minor hit for Nick Cage at the time. And of course, he's going to roll out 800,000 movies in this time frame, which is a lot of them are going to be really good. So
And it's good. I remember it now that you said that. It's a rom com type thing, right? Isn't it one of those kind of vibes? Yeah. It pales in comparison in my memory to the movie The Mask. Now, there's several reasons that I think this movie could be and may not have done as well as in my mind it imagines that it did. One of those reasons is when what's her last name, whatever her face is.
Cameron Diaz.
Thank you. Cameron Diaz shows up in this movie and just melts me in half. I don't know if this is her first movie, but I just remember this is when I recognized her. This is when she came out to me and I was like, oh my God, she is stunning. And then you have Jim Carrey playing a zany comic book character, Stanley Ipkiss. That's a different movie. He's crazy as crap in this movie. He gets to do Jim Carrey, and it's a superhero movie that's just basically like teenage boy humor all the way through it. Pretty much flawless. I don't know the numbers on it, but again, if you've never seen The Mask, it is a zany, wild, weird. It's a very weird movie. Uh, it almost seems like it's playing out in Mel Gibson from Lethal Weapon's brain. That's what it feels like to me. If you take Mel Gibson and Lethal Weapon, how he is with it just feels like it's a movie that would be playing out in his character's mind. Anyway, what do you got on The Mask? What do we got there?
Let's work backwards a little bit. So yeah, Cameron Diaz, quite amazing. This is her first movie, and definitely her as well. She's done a lot of big movies, but this is a huge movie for her. And his name is Stanley Ipkiss in this.
Oh,
In this.
all right.
Believe your own memory, man. Come on.
I
And
know.
one of those films, right? So this movie only cost about $23 million to make, which it would cost it would cost well over 100 million to make without question these days. But it made $352 million.
Holy smokes.
I mean, it's a massive film, and yeah, I mean, Jim Carrey is just absolutely rolling here in the night at this point. I mean, he's huge, and I mean, my brother wanted to see it. Everybody wanted to see this, and saw it at Carmike 10, and of course, I saw it. I actually saw it a couple of times in theaters. I caught it at Movies 10 as well. I mean, I love The Mask. I love this character. It's tons of one-liners, tons of great dialogue, great actors. Peter Rieger's in it. Amy Yazbek's in it from Wings, of
Yep.
course, and Richard Jenny, who's since passed away. But yeah, it's a hilarious movie. Well in Jim Carrey's prime, and he's really becoming that guy at this point. Really super bankable, and I mean, it's maybe his best movie. I don't know. It just kind of depends on what you feel like is his best film. I mean, Ace Ventura, Liar Liar. There's a whole bunch of them, But this is definitely up there. No question about that.
I feel like it's also one of those movies that is very much iconically 90s, meaning most people I know that were of a certain age in that era, they all know this movie. Like we all knew this movie. Like obviously the budget or the box office says that, but it's also one of those films that like it just had all the sentiment of a 1990s movie. It also was, although based on I believe a graphic novel, it still felt different and weird. And again, if anybody ever wants to understand, if you don't remember or you're younger or older and you kind of want to wrap your head around it, just go on YouTube and look up 90s TV commercials and watch a few of those and look at how weird those were when we had those it was not Firehouse Subs, those toasties. Who did that? Quiznos. The Quiznos commercials, for example. Weirdest commercials you'll ever see. Weird. Who would That's so 90s. But it's like this movie. This movie's so 90s. There's something endearing and charming that kind of makes it live on in my mind. And it's again another huge movie for what Tony said, a $20 million budget. It makes 350 is stupid, and it lives on in people's memories, which I think is the wildest shite in the world to me, in a great
It
way.
was like the biggest movie that had ever been released based on a comic.
Yep.
So most profitable, from because the budget again is just not big for what we're dealing with nowadays. I mean, like I said, this movie would be shot for way over $100 million now, probably about more like 150 range. So, especially with Carey, because his numbers are going to bloom up for a long, long time. He's going to be making $20 million or more per movie after this. So for a long time. But yeah, I mean, it's The Mask is quintessential Jim Carrey. I mean, and he's got the great dog character, which is absolutely awesome, and it'll spawn a sequel that doesn't have anything to do with Jim Carrey, and it'll also have a really funny cartoon based
Yeah,
on this.
you're right.
Quite
You're totally right. I forgot about that. And it, again, just quintessential 90s type comedy and very zany and something that we enjoyed. Um, and with that, one of the things that I've really enjoyed that Tony's been doing lately, and I've had a lot of feedback on this.
Mhm.
People love the show. We get a lot of feedback, but people absolutely love hearing the album release stuff. And so I'd love it if you could, if you have that stuff ready. I'd love to go over this because it is like that epiphany of I did not remember. For example, last time we did this, we talked about that Weezer's Blue album and Beastie Boys' Ill Communication came out within the same window is mind blowing to me of how much those records mean to me. Those albums are so good. And so here we
Yeah,
are
but
doing it again. Go ahead. Go ahead. I was just saying, here we are doing it again.
yeah, no, I mean, it was one of those things that we kind of talked about, and we wanted to try to. I mean, we've been doing a lot of movie stuff and tributes and things like that, and we do all kinds of stuff, and we get a lot of good feedback and all that. I felt like we talk about music a good bit in different times, but we've been only usually bringing it in for soundtracks and stuff like that to kind of enhance the movie side. I think it was always kind of a good idea to kind of realize that, man, there's so many good albums coming out in the 90s. Let's talk about these albums as well. And we did get a lot of feedback on this when we did it a couple weeks ago. And a lot of people loved our little jabs on each other about the band live. We got a lot about that.
I got a lot of feedback too. Listen, there's a lot of people that agree with me. I just ignore the haters of me. I,
Crash is a song that's been like overplayed a
it's
lot.
never going away, folks. The rivalry will never die. It'll never die.
Um, But let's talk about some of these movies some of these albums that are coming out in July of 1994. It starts with Music for the Jilted Generation by The Prodigy.
Game changer.
Their biggest album, but it's still a pretty big one for them.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's going to come out one day before this album, which is going to go diamond. It's going to sell more than 10 million copies. It's still huge. It still gets played all the time. And that is Hootie and the Blowfish is going to
Oh,
release a review. And I'm feeling it. Don't even lie.
I
Don't
do
even
not. I have never, you can't even say that. I have never, ever liked Hootie and the Blowfish. I, in fact, had another name for them that was just awful because I hate them so much. It has nothing to do with the singer. I think Darius Rucker's country music is actually really good. I hated Hootie and the Blowfish with a passion. Takes a
let me
little bit of time.
let me tell you who liked Hootie and the Blowfish. There was a buddy of mine that I went to school with. You know him, Andy Davis.
Yeah.
This guy loved Hootie and the Blowfish. I mean, absolutely loved Hootie and the Blowfish. He was he. I mean, every time I get into his car, this day, Hootie and the Blowfish. Every time, I didn't mind them. I mean, they're good. I mean, I didn't own this album, um, but I didn't dislike him as much as you did. But I still remember, and of course, we're not going to do it just yet. We'll get to this at some point. We'll talk about it. But I still remember when you and I hung out with the Bloodhound Gang.
Yeah.
When Auburn had hung out with the Bloodhound Gang up there, and they did the outdoor show, and then they did that great show in the basement for like
Yep.
15 of us or 20 of us or how many of us. But I remember them telling the story about. Do you remember the story about them being in
No.
the so so they were both repped by the same company, Bloodhound Gang and Hootie and the Blowfish, and they ended up in Hootie and the Blowfish's the van that would be their van, and they knew it. They knew that Hootie and the Blowfish. They had gotten this van from them, and they knew it was going back to them after they were done using it, and so they cracked the rear view mirror intentionally in this van because they knew it was going back to them, and of course the album's called Cracked Rear View. So yeah, it's kind of a funny little story. But I mean, the album's massive. You can't. I
Yeah.
mean, you still hear these songs all
You
the time.
do. You do. And again, like I just sang part of it. I know that song. Like know your enemy, I guess is my whole thing.
Um, Liquor in the Front by Reverend Horton Heat. That's coming out
Classic. Classic.
same day as Hootie and the Blowfish as well. And on the 11th of July, you get Voodoo Lounge, Rolling Stones. You know,
Good record. Yeah.
and now it's considered like kind of a classic record because we're now in 2025. At the time, you'd get the people that would be like, "Oh man, that's not as good as the songs from the '60s. I like the old Rolling Stones." It's amazing how bands can be around so long that we're now 30 years into the future. Now that's considered a classic. I remember when it first came out, people were like, "This isn't as good as the old Rolling Stones," and blah blah blah. Now, of course, a lot of people like this album, and it's changed. The narrative has changed on it over the course of time because people have heard it so much now. And I love how that kind of works out when you're around long enough to actually experience it. Dewdrops in the Garden by D Light, not going to be the biggest album of their career, of course. This on July 12th is going to set off a bit of controversy. There's three albums coming out here that are pretty big. Downset,
Oh, big one for us. Yeah.
it's their initial album. Grassroots by 311,
Ooh, goodness gracious.
and Hungry for Stink by L7. That's a pretty good day.
That's a pretty good day. Downsets. Is that the record with Anger? Is their first album the one with Anger?
And of course, The Last Temptation by Alice Cooper comes out this same day as well. It's a good album too. But this is the Downset album we're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. This album became legendary amongst our peer group of boys. It's a very boy compared to L7, very metal girl, very heavy, very edgy. But this Downset record, my God, did we crank this song? There's a song that just begins with the singer just saying anger, hostility towards the opposition. And I can't tell you that for the rest of in fact, I played it 3 weeks ago. I was filming a commercial in Southern Miss, and I had these kids that were with me they're like 23, 24 years old. And I'd ever asked them if they'd ever heard it. And they were like, no. I was like, no, because they were talking about what was hardcore. And I was like, this was hardcore when we were growing up, L7. And then I played that exact song, and they just looked at me like, what are you talking about, old man? I was like, you don't understand what's happened with this song. There's been some things.
Well, I mean, this comes out, and of course, this starts into the legendary fight between us.
Yes.
This is the legendary fight where you and I are driving around in the car doing what we call laps, which is like just driving in a big circle.
Yep.
And all through the streets of Mobile, around our neighborhoods, essentially. And you and I had this. You got to remember, when people hear things like this, they got to understand how old we are. Okay, this is 1990 because we wouldn't do this now. Okay, this is 1994. I haven't even turned 18 yet, so I'm 17 years old.
Yep.
You haven't even turned 16 yet.
Right.
In September, so you're like 15 years old, and yeah, I mean that's kind of where we are. So, um, you know, the situation is that we got into this big argument about who had heard this band first. So yeah,
Yeah, and it got into a bad. I remember the fact that the song was anger, hostility towards the opposition, and Tony and I are sitting there having a fight over who heard this first, because for some reason that was like a badge of honor for those of you that are laughing alongside us. But that was a badge of honor back in the day. Like if you were the person that found this band and you got to expose it, because this is pre-internet world. So if you found, so to us, it was a big deal. So yes, we get into a blowout over who heard the band Downset first, and it became a legendarily stupid argument that would not mean anything, but it caused some ripples for a little while.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it was it was kind of funny. I mean, of course, we would never do that today. I'd like to think we wouldn't do that.
I can't even imagine why.
Yeah, kind of funny thing. And later on, of course, July 19th, It Takes a Thief, Julio,
Yep. Classic.
fantastic. That's a great album. Of course,
What a
some people,
summer anthem.
oh
Summer
yeah,
anthem.
huge, and that's of course our first foray into Coolio. You know,
Yep.
it's just people are hearing him for the first time. Um, Portrait of American Family, Marilyn Manson, also great.
Really?
That comes out on that day.
Good grief.
Uh,
I did not, I thought they were later. I did not realize Manson came out that early. I, for some reason, thought they were 96, 97. Which, no, it makes sense because we would have been playing with
some,
Jake.
some of their bigger stuff's going to come out in that time, but
Well, I'm just thinking about Jake. If you remember, Jake Hyman was a drummer in a band with us that I was in. It was called. I got a weird story about that. I'll tell you later. But a band called 6 Foot Dracula, and we're in this band called 6 Foot Dracula, and the only thing Jake listened to at the time was Marilyn Manson. So that's wild. I for some reason I'm just not thinking about the fact that we were 16 when we were in that band. So yeah, 1 year later, or I was 16 at least. Wade and Jake were younger, but they were 14 or so. And so, yeah, wow, that is wild. Absolutely wild.
and then Punk and Drublick by NoFX.
Yeah, it's a classic.
I mean, that's a classic as well. And yeah, I mean, it's you get an Out of Range by Franco, who was somebody that a lot of people that we know liked. So
Yep.
who didn't know back then, but still a talented artist. That's kind of the summary of July of 1995.
It's crazy because it's again another big mix of music. Some of it more personal than others. Obviously, the downset's very just you and I. Um, but what I find fascinating about when we add that in is it's kind of like we were talking about earlier with Forrest Gump. When you have those songs, you can hear them in your head, and for some reason, you have the ability to see where you were when you saw a movie and all that, right? And we can remember those portions. But I think for a lot of people too, and I think Forrest Gump did it well, it also helps trigger like, what were you listening to at the time? And just like for me, out of all of those, the one that stands out is I remember hearing Fantastic Voyage for the very first time. Like I remember hearing it. I remember it being a summer anthem. I remember it being a big, huge track that would live on until Gangster's Paradise comes out. And it's just like one of those things of, while it may not have been as big as like Hootie or as controversial as to us as Downset or L7. L7 was fairly controversial based on the way they kind of did stuff. Or Punk and Drublick is always, no effects is always controversial at the time. That album and of course, and then Marilyn Manson. So it's a lot of controversy. But the point is like that Fantastic Voyage became that anthem for the summer, and I remember it. Like that's something that comes back to me very cleanly. So I think it's kind of fascinating. I love the music conversation added to the movies because it just adds more texture and flavor. So great job on pulling those up. All right, so that's going to do it for this episode. Obviously, we've hit on a lot of stuff. Again, if you haven't, if you're looking for something to watch, I would suggest maybe Tony and I both gave you a bunch of options for Michael Madsen films. Maybe consider one of those. Could be fun. Could find something new you've never seen before, or revisit one of his tremendous catalog of movies because it's quite a few. There's also great music we just listened. If you have questions about him, go listen to them. They're still out there. The upside of music versus movies is most of the music you can find online a lot easier than you can than movies. And just go listen to some of those and just check them out. Now, I'll tell you, Mom, because I know you listen to the show, I don't think you'll enjoy Punk and Drublick. I don't suggest you listen to Punk and Drublick. I don't think you'd like Downset L7. You might like Hootie and the Blowfish, though. So maybe, Mom, Hootie and the Blowfish might be for you. But otherwise, just get out there and listen to what you want to have. Tony, do you have anything else to say before we close this bad boy out?
Hey, we've talked about some of the summer movies that are coming out now, and of course, I just saw a midnight showing of the new Jurassic World movie, and we were talking about this movie in our summer preview show, and it's pretty darn good. It's really good. I enjoyed it. The first trailer was not good for this movie. The second and third trailers for the film looked a lot better, and it's plays a lot more like the second and third trailer than it does the first one. First one, not good. Second and third trailer is great. Saw it at midnight. Amazing film. Check it out. I'd highly recommend that. I'd highly recommend the new Pixar movie Elio, which I thought was amazing. Thought it was quite incredible. And of course, How to Train Your Dragons out there right now as well. And an amazing live action version of that. I'd recommend all three of the films. Go to the box office, go to the theaters, enjoy the films, and support all the movies that are out there. Because if you wait until the stuff is streaming, you're part of the problem. You're not helping the movies. You're not giving them any money. Movies are a product like anything else. If you wait to watch them on streaming, you are not helping the cause at all. Don't complain later on that we're not making the type of movies that you want to watch. When you're not going to the theater and supporting them or buying the DVDs, you're not going to have the movies you want made. I promise you. Get to the theater, support the movies you want to watch. That's the best way to make sure you are voting with your pocketbook.
There it is. I'm going to let it close with that. Thanks for listening.